Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Amusing Panda live stream, your musing and amusing source for all things War Machine. This week, I am very excited to be joined by a guest I've actually been hoping to have on for a long time. We got Max from Texas. Come on up, Max.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? First time on here. What's your history with the game, and what are you up to these days?
Yeah, so I am a player out of North Texas right now. We have a pretty small competitive community up in North Texas. There's some other communities down in Austin or San Antonio and Houston, I believe. But us in North Texas, there's only about 8 of us. Currently, I'm playing Kith Guard. I have been traveling for events for the past year or so for Mark IV. I started playing Mark IV in March of 25, I believe. And then prior to that, I played Mark III from like 2016 timeframe to like 2017. So about a year and a half of Mark III before it all went downhill. But that's really about that.
There's a lot of time periods in which things could have been said to have been going downhill, but everyone has their own personal trough on that one. So you've actually been playing Mark IV longer than Mark III at this point, right? Or very close
Probably
to it.
very close. I would say about the same time. Yeah. And back then
Yeah.
I was very young, so I didn't have the time, energy, or mental capacity to commit to a game like War Machine.
Well, coming onto the scene for a bit of over a year back in, you have made quite the splash, both on the circuit and in you've done some content with Ryan Chiraboga over on the Spell Rack, and you're running a qualifier in like 2 months, right?
Yeah, I am running the Lone Star Championship down in Texas, August 22nd, 23rd, I believe. So
Yep, and that's in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and
yeah,
we still have slots open, right? If for anybody who's out there that's either in the area or can make it to the area that wants to come.
yeah, I think there's about 10 more spaces open. It's capped at 64 right now. That's what the requirement was to be a championship. So I think we're at 52, 53 people signed up. So
Okay,
hoping to keep it
awesome.
around there.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab that link and see if I can drop it in the chat. YouTube sometimes pitches a fit about links in chat. Oh, hold on, dog.
Okay.
I'm gonna be managing animals a little bit in the background here too, because I got these guys with me, and Stinky really loves these kittens, but sometimes he plays a little too rough with them, so I gotta keep an eye on him. Okay. Well, today we're going to talk about a really interesting topic that you and I had a private conversation about, where you pitched this to me as sort of an augment to Who's the Beatdown, and living on a bit more of a player psychological level. But before we get into that, we had some new model drops with a huge new wave of Dusk Fane of Nero coming out. So what do you say we give those guys a look?
Yeah, we can try.
All right. So this was a new box that came with Ashmail and then a whole bevy of new units, and a new solo. I'm certain our mutual friend Nick will be over the moon about no longer running max FA of Fane. He says he's getting his Fane of Nero on the table. But yeah, let's dive into these guys. What do you think of Ashmail, Keeper of Whispers? And then I guess right before we went live, you were talking about some of the controversy this guy's spawning.
Yeah, so brief look at Ashmail. I haven't really delved too much into him. He seems like a very difficult caster to play. I would probably give him my vote for like the hardest caster in the game to play, just based off his toolkit revolving around multiple moving pieces and certain timing with his like specific spell or unique spell, and then his feat. But A lot of controversies, mainly around his feat, because it kind of breaks that fourth wall, since it is the first feat that I can remember that specifically interacts with scenario elements.
Mm-hmm.
And then his unique spell being able to give models inconsequential seems to be a rabble rouser concept.
Right. Yeah. Let's start with his spy master. So as far as a hunger generation ability, we saw Hysine get hunger from killing models in melee, and then Ashmael gets hunger counters once each from hitting with a melee attack, arcane attack, and ranged attack. So this guy can generate a lot personally, but he kind of has to do a bit of everything to be going balls to the wall. And then the abilities he grants in addition to shadow shift, just stepping back, like I think there was a big positive reaction to Firequill getting the spell Shellfish Bullets, which forced enemy models not to score. And people were really excited, but it's kind of a marginal spell with Firequill. Like, you're not casting it all the time. It's not the most, high impact thing in the world, but I think people were very interested in. Oh, hold on one second. Dog, how did you get that? Oh my God. So I saw my dog playing with a paint pot, and I have no idea where he got it from. Boy, you had to open a cabinet to get this. But yeah, I think there was a lot of excitement for Steamforged to release abilities that directly interacted with scenarios, and Firequill was sort of like a tentative first baby step toward that. But now what we have with Ashmael is somebody who's all about it. So hunger abilities, we have Corrupt for 6 that once per game lets you score an additional victory point out of a scenario element. I don't see any rule that says he can't do this more than once per turn. Do you see anything like that?
No, from what I can understand about it, is it's basically as soon as your opponent scores a scenario element, he can spend 6 points, 600 points to corrupt it. He can corrupt as many times as he can afford, and each scenario element can be corrupted once per game. So if your opponent scores 3 elements for 3 points, you corrupt all 3, you now have the opportunity to score 6 back on those same element points.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could be looking at, like, if you build a hunger maxing army, you could potentially be looking at, like, top of 3. I'm going to corrupt 3 scenario elements and just, like, blow you out.
Yeah. And with the new stuff they've added, it definitely seems more reasonable to dish out Afflictor and to generate hunger without actually interacting or killing models with beasts.
Yep. And then he's also got Misdirect. So essentially he can give models Shield Guard, but it's not called Shield Guard. And he can do it. Looks like this is an anytime ability. And then Stolen Fate is the phantom die mechanic of Seraphel. You can spend a hunger point for an additional die that counts for critting. He has Swift Hunter. I just noticed that he has Rate of Fire 3 on his gun. Oh God. So he has Swift Hunter and he has Resourceful. Gun has Beatback, Brutal Damage, Witch Mark. I think particularly on a Rate of Fire 3 gun, hilariously a Rate of Fire 3 gun with a highly likely crit ricochet. He can have some pretty phenomenal beatback off of scenario plays. Pretty good crit brutal damage melee weapon. Spell list is Admonition, as you alluded to, Dissected Essence, that gives a model -2 arm and inconsequential. Mirage, Pursuit, and then the feat is place a desecration token on each non-cash scenario element within Ashmael's control area. When a friendly faction model attacks an enemy model that is within contesting range of a scenario element with a desecration token, they gain an additional die on attack and damage rolls. Discard the lowest die on each roll. When you secure a scenario element with a desecration token, remove the token from it. So it's interesting. An interesting thing about this is if you pop feat on, scenario elements that your opponent, like, say it's like they're 40 or something on trench warfare, that, like, you're not gonna secure for a long time, but you now get signs and portents against models on that until you do. This is a pretty wild model and very difficult to visualize what he's going to be doing here. Do you have any sort of picture of what you're expecting that to look like?
Yeah. I mean, kind of, I guess. A couple things, like the misdirect, his 2 cost, make anything a show guard. It also works for sprays, because it doesn't specify it doesn't. Right, so you're able to intercept sprays by spending 2 hunger off of them, and that can even be for like the Ancient Shroud unit that we'll talk about later. Right, they can basically intercept a spray, take the damage, take only 1 damage, and then move on. And then the Dissected Essence, it gives a unit, or it gives a model inconsequential for a turn, and then the next turn they get -2 armor, which is a really weird like layering effect on a spell. I have no idea how this one actually works. It's a bit awkward, but yeah, I don't know. This one is a little confusing because I don't know if you cast it and you make a model inconsequential, and then the next turn they have -2 armor. If you hit them with the spell again, are they inconsequential and they're -2 armor because it's 2 layers of it, or does it reset back to the initial layer of inconsequential?
I don't know. I only saw these models like maybe 30 minutes before we went live, so there's a lot in here that I'm missing that I haven't even internalized yet.
I unfortunately had all day to break down these models. It's been these guys definitely hit the Discord with a storm.
Yeah.
How this guy plays, I think with the addition of the new box, and soon maybe the other boxes will flesh out a little bit more of the faction, it's kind of he makes it seem like he's playing a disruption game, and that makes sense for like the spy master of a faction to be this like disruption piece. Corrupt is something that you can usually act as like a catch-up mechanic, or a what is it called? Like, I don't even know. I'm drawing a blank. What's the opposite of catch-up, where you beat them up more? Why am I drawing a blank for this one?
A win more?
Win more. Yeah, it's either a catch up or a win more mechanic. Misdirect is just like interesting, and then Stolen Fate. There's not a lot of models that I think actually have like useful criticals aside from himself currently, and then his feat. I mean,
you got the old crit freeze on the Strigon rider, giving him
I forgot about that.
a 4th die.
Yeah. And then. So the feat, right, it specifically mentions secure, and securing models are when a unit is eligible to score it, but somebody is contesting it, they are securing it, right? So the moment your opponent leaves the objective while you have models on it who are eligible to score it, you are now securing it, and therefore, if you end your turn with a desecrated icon, or was that what it's called? What is it? Desecration token, right?
Yep.
Is on an objective. If you have models on there that are eligible to score it, and your opponent simply walks the models contesting it off, the token goes away, and then they can charge another unit back onto the objective to kill your models, and that basically removes your feat token from it.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, there is this guy has a lot of layers. He definitely incentivizes a certain level of play, especially with all his spells quite literally being like movement, besides Dissected Essence, just Admonition, Mirage, and Pursuit are all very punishing spells for your opponents to interact with or not interact with. So I see him more as like a disruption piece, probably plays a longer game, and then when the rest of the army comes down, we start finding more damage dealers, then maybe we can play this army with the intent of like killing models. But right now they don't really have a lot of models that can remove models.
I'm seeing some chat in here. Edward Cote or Cote. Do we really know about the hunger economy? Is the cost of 6 points really expensive? I guess a comparison question is, how often have you seen Hycene get off Brutal Strike? Because if she can do it at cost 7 with any kind of regularity, then odds are higher that Ashmail, now with more models that can generate hunger, it seems like you're pretty likely to get this to go off with some regularity. Let's see. I guess one last note on the controversy. You mentioned that there is apparently a global population of people blowing up about but what if you're not playing with scenario?
Yeah, that was a real statement that came up frequently in the like trash cord feign section, is that there's a lot of local smaller communities who just don't play with scenario elements, and that's that's just, you're playing War Machine with the way you want to play it, and that's cool and all, but obviously you would have to come up with some idea of how this dude's feet would interact. And then the other side of that, that's a bit more like realistic, is that the only scenario elements in War Machine currently are the SR26, like the Steamroller pack. Everything else doesn't. So like the Journeyman League section, from what I've understood, doesn't have any form of like scenario elements, and then the base game, if outside of the SR26, doesn't have scenario elements. So it seems like they had specifically the Steamroller packet, whether now or future, in mind when creating him. But yeah, I guess you have to play objectives now if you want to play Ashmail. So that's right.
Yeah, I suppose so. We're forcing people. Yeah, I think the most notable resource this caster taxes is reading comprehension, at least for me right now. There's so much going on here.
Definitely have to pass the literacy check with this guy.
Yeah. But on the note of hunger economy, we have this. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of models in here that are going to have challenging names to pronounce. We have Gilvana the Tormented. So she's, I was looking at this model. Keith, can you grab her out of the solo section? So I was looking at this model, and she's so she's cost 3. Okay, 14-11 stealth for a caster attachment's pretty reasonable. Special abilities, she has guidance and sorceress unbinding, so she can strip enemy upkeeps off your caster. And she can hand out eyeless sight and magic weapon. And then that's all she does, aside from Rupture Essence, which is you can sacrifice her to gain a number of hunger points equal to the current round. What do we think about this one?
She's definitely a model.
She's one of the models of all time.
Models of all time, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Guidance is a really good ability to have. It seems like it's just like a pocket ability for your casters, since they are some of the only models you probably want to get in melee currently that don't have a form of ignoring clouds. I guess maybe the double character unit that is out right now probably also wants to see through clouds to charge, but other than that, she seems like she is a Ruptured Essence bot, and she just stands around and hopes she doesn't die until the caster tells her it's time. I don't know how to feel about her. I think she's interesting. She's an attached model, which typically is either like completely ignored or a very powerful concept. So there maybe some caster in the future will have a field marshal or a field marshal in cohorts. So something to grant her their battle group that is actually worth taking a 3-point solo who gives out eyeless sight.
Yeah, it remains dubious whether she's worth it at that cost point if her main purpose is dying. Moving on, we got the Blood Sirens. This is another one that I guess has people has people's panties a bit in a twist. So they're not a great output unit. They got some POW 9 sacral blades and anatomical precision, and they're a 3-man at 8 points, which is quite dear. 12/12 Ancient Shroud, and then once per model per turn, they can grab you and force you to advance 3 inches. What do we think of these guys?
So the Unholy Glamour is when this model directly hits a non-leader model with an attack, you can take control of it. They have 2 blades, so you could technically get 6 instances of this off if it somehow worked that you were in combat with 6 different models. Right, so that seems neat. The moving other models is pretty decent. Again, Fane is being blessed with the most impressive output with this POW 9 and anatomical precision model. So I don't think this one's being taken to actually deal damage. Sometimes anatomical precision comes up to like negate tough rolls or to get through like single box models that are high armor, like shield wall models, I guess. But in reality, this just looks like a 8-point pocket unit that you throw onto an objective on a flank or on a scenario that your opponent doesn't have the output to deal with. So I don't know. I see models like this, and I think of like Old Umbre. Like the Old Umbre have wardens who have like a pretty high volume of attacks that can get pretty high POW. But other than that, like a bear cav unit or something else having to go into this 8-point model and hit it 9 times does not sound very fruitful. So it seems like a lot of these models are being targeted to favor certain armies. So it's neat to see that. I mean, Storm Legion's not a great army, but Lightning Leap loves these guys. So maybe that's
sure. Yeah, just put damage rolls on them. Yeah. Watch them shock themselves to death. I will say a note on these guys, 2 notes. And this sort of loops back around to the, Bodan has been talked about for some time, people debating whether his 2-inch place spell is an upgrade or a downgrade from Befuddle. It's definitely a downgrade. And the reason for that is there is a hierarchy of move your enemy pieces abilities. At the bottom is push. In the middle is place. And at the top is advance. And the reason for that is there's a couple of reasons for that. One, taking control of enemy models has a bunch of weird follow-on effects that can be incredibly powerful. But 2, almost no set of abilities defends against advancing. For instance, these guys can break Lockabash Brothers wall because they can't be pushed, they can't be placed, but they can sure as shit walk their asses away. So that's very potent. And then the second note is combining that with like, okay, we were looking at Ashmael and all these movement abilities he has. And then you also have like, okay, but you have a unit of 3 guys that can, shove, like make multiple models take a walk. And then we have Sabaris who can drag a model 6 inches over the course of 3 attacks. This faction's got some pretty crazy enemy model movement abilities if you really want it. I could see this army very easily hitting game states where it's like, no, I'm just going to win on scenario and I'm not going to kill anything.
Yep. It's crit, ricochet, beat back on 3 attacks. So it's pretty interesting to resolve.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to shove this heavy and shove that guy and shove this heavy and shove that guy and shove this heavy and shove that guy. Yeah, it's nutty. Any final observations or Fane Stalkers?
No, I didn't. Interesting unit. These guys.
Yep. Slow speed, but this is a good unit. So man, that whole thing about having Matt and Rat 6 sort of be the benchmark in the game. Fane and Nero is unbothered. So we have a Rat 7 CRA unit with range 12, POW 10 guns, and we got Thunderbolt, Afflictor, and Huntsman's Lure, which is +2 speed for Warbeast charging models hit. This makes models like Sibaris threat 14 without any add-ons, and I believe there's at least one Vordak configuration that hits that too. But the big ones, I think, are just putting Torment on enemy models. So you're shutting down healing, you're generating hunger, and doing so at range, or we're just going to shove you 3 times. So playing up that scenario thing.
More disruption.
Yep. Yeah. Pretty generic unit. A lot of the units in this faction are quite expensive. Like the Fane Knights really are the cheapo option here. And then we have the Clivenesh. Do you have any inkling as to how this is supposed to be pronounced?
No. Clivenesh sounds good though. The other way, I'm not sure how I feel about that one, but Clivenesh sounds good.
All right. Well, these guys are cloaked in darkness. So we have a stealth, blast resist, defense 15 unit, which is an obnoxiously good combination of abilities to have. And when they shadow shift, they negate damage. So if they spend hunger points to teleport out, they don't take damage at all. Repo 3, Afflictor, Weapon Master, POW 10 gunshot, and then either POW 12 Weapon Master gain hunger points, or POW 10 decap Weapon Master at range 3. What are these guys doing aside from everything? And do they justify the cost of 11?
I mean, 11 points expensive. Like, I think only Old Umbre's Cavalry is that expensive. Are they 11 now? I think so. So I mean, they're tied.
Yeah, 11 is like the most that a unit costs. I think this is the same as Man of War suppressors as well.
Oh yeah, they are 11 as well. Yeah. I mean, these dudes have like Icon City. They have everything. It looks like a Colossal's dashboard up at the top. They're literally blast resist, gunfighter, dual attack, AD, pathfinder, stealth. They got it all. These guys are interesting. Threading 13 naturally is like a really good way to start a unit. And no matter what they release in faction now, speeding these guys up only is just like more and more beneficial. Range 3 with the Razor Blades as a ranged option and dual attack is, I mean, they have gunfighter, so my point's almost invalid, but being able to threat 13 and then still shoot out of combat that additional 6 inches is interesting. And then also it's each time this weapon is made, are you chosen to make an attack? You choose the option. So your leading model charges is at that successful 3-inch max charge, and then places the other 2, and the other 2 flip to the range 2 POW 12 to generate hunger. And then it gives you some like a little bit of variation to how they play. I can definitely see like just auto decap all the time is probably very nice, but hunger generation for certain casters might be super relevant. So these guys are pretty neat. I think we're starting to get to the point in Fane where models actually decide they want to kill other models instead of just thunderbolting them off objectives over and over again. So this is probably the better way to go about it. You also forgot their names, Cosmo. You don't want to talk about their names.
Oh,
and how to identify them.
Calcera and Velon. I actually don't know which one is which. I haven't looked at the models.
Could you tell me which of their brothers is which? Do you know?
Oh, the Lockabash brothers? Oh yeah, easy peasy.
Okay.
So Durgle is the guy with the rifle up, Connor is rifle forward, and McCaber is running. Everyone knows this.
Okay, perfect. Now do it for the Furies, and then you're really getting into the war machines.
Oh, I used to know the Furies because they used to have different abilities, and then I
Oh,
stopped. The real prestige one that I've not even seen Orgoth players do is identify which one of the execrators is which. Even War Table just goes 1, 2, 3.
is it actually? I never even
Yeah,
checked. That's really
yeah. It
funny.
just it
Yeah.
just 1, 2, 3s
Execrator 1, 2, and 3. Don't even know their names.
Yeah. Well, they're all identical triplets.
Another thing we forgot to mention with the Blood Sirens and the Fane Stalkers is that every unit they're adding is basically allowed to have any of the command attachments to them. So Blood Sirens and Fane Stalkers could have the Sithis Prophet attached to them in order to grant them Ashen Veil and Grim Returns. So it's something
Oh
to think about.
God. Yeah, that's nutty. Yeah, I mean, they'll only come back at 1, but that's still pretty good.
Even,
And
I
then
mean, I don't know how useful the Sithis Prophet is. The Sithis Overseer seems a little bit more interesting, but
yeah, it cost 1. It's quite reasonable, whereas the Prophet is actually before we move off
sorry.
the Clavinesh, one thing I mentioned is like, okay, these models can make a ton of attacks and do a lot of business. Every model, I think, because we're seeing like clear differences between like Ashmail and Hysene, every model's really got to be looked at in the context of those hunger abilities. Obviously these guys get a lot of benefits with the shadow shift, but Hysene can also just like spend 2 hunger and have them make additional decap weapon master
Yep.
attacks. Like these guys, like they do a lot of work baseline. They can do, if there's a lot of hunger down, they can do an unbelievable amount of work in one activation. But yeah, last and maybe least, we have the Sithis Overseer, so very cheap attachment. Uh gives your guys blast resist, and he has a wee baby version of Ashmail's gun.
I think Ashmail just has 3 Void Tooths is the idea. I don't know what a Void Tooth is, but I guess
Me either.
the Sithis Overseer has 1, and Ashmail is pocketing 3 of them. So
yeah, I mean, it's 1 point for a POW 10 brutal damage gunshot is not terrible. This guy does have some complications to him though, and like some things that maybe won't work exactly as anticipated because he has no melee weapon. If the unit charges, he just has to run. So that's a little odd.
yeah, I don't. It seems like a lot of people are just speculating putting this guy on the Blood Sirens to make them armor 12 blast resist.
I don't know how valuable that is.
I don't. I think your 8-point unit shouldn't cost 9 points to have this drudge being dragged along who's not stealth. So like, even though they're blast resist, like this
yeah,
dude is
he's
just
a blast magnet.
Yeah, exactly.
And their armor's still low enough
Yep.
that like, oh, guess what? POW 8 blast damage still gets through a third of the time.
Yep. And I'd rather just play Blood Sirens and put up D-Cell and say like 2 dice off 8 is probably reasonable enough than paying a point for this guy. For that specific. Him on maybe in the future when they start adding in dregs to actually be shadow shifted to. So I feel like that's where the army is pretty harsh right now, is that every model is like multiple points. Like Fane Knights being literally 2 points each. Like taking an attack, shadow shifting to a Fane Knight and just killing 2 points does sound better than losing your character unit, but at the same time, there's nothing that's truly like a complete waste to just shift to.
Yeah.
So maybe this guy's that 1-point dude just to shift to.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly could be that. I just noticed something, by the way, which is that that the Blood Sirens are not an Eldritch unit, which is odd. I don't know how big the implications of that are going to be, but it means you can't use hunger abilities on them. So
well, they can't benefit from hunger abilities. They can still
right. Yeah. They can't benefit from hunger abilities, I guess is the correct way to put it. Let's see. If all the units are expensive, does that make Shadow Shift less powerful? It certainly can.
Camera decided to go 140p or something. Yeah,
oh God, is it my camera again?
I don't know. But yeah, that was that. I don't know if he probably said it first. That dude's probably smarter than me. But yeah, exactly that. If you're shadow shifting to save a model but killing a model that's only a point or two less, doesn't seem like a great economy to spend it on. It seems like hunger is just going to be used to say save a beast, save a caster, or blend models with high scene. Oh.
Yeah, well,
that's a strong opinion.
He's playing pigs.
Oh.
I think this faction may be more flummoxing. Yeah, they're custom built to destroy Midas in Thornfall from top to bottom. Yeah, that's about right. Well,
Midas is the bring dudes back guy, right? The pet cemetery, is that Midas?
Yeah, Pet Cemetery. And he's got the I wonder, does Shadow Shift let you shift out of okay. So if you get I just thought of something. If you get hit with like mortality, you can just Shadow Shift out.
Like, and it just doesn't have effect, right? I'd assume, yeah.
No, let me choose another friendly model. No, it'll have effect. Oh, yeah. You'll just nope out before they even have the opportunity to attack you. But yeah, that's the new Fane of Nero stuff. This is getting this faction is looking alarming the more and more I see of them. So
more affliction, more torment, more
avenues of play.
Yeah, more decaps from high scene onto my caster's forehead. That's what it's going to
be. she's the head-on warcaster. Apply directly to the forehead.
Exactly.
Let's see. We got some more from Jeff. RFP on Beast negates his feat. They out-threat Avenging Force. They shadow shift out of his assassination. Yeah, it sounds.
I've recently learned Midas's assassination route. It's pretty funny. Charging in the pig and spawning them on the enemy caster is pretty interesting.
Yeah, which is now an option that Morton Nebra has too, which is kind of fun. She's maybe not a joke this year.
Yeah, except for all the Morton Nebra lists I've seen are literally like 2 jacks and 20 thralls.
I don't know how to explain that.
Couldn't tell you, Cosmo. I don't know why somebody would do that. 4 sidewinders.
Yep.
That's a cool list.
Have you embraced the sidewinders yet?
Yeah, I own 4. Oh, right here. I can show you all 4 if you want individually, Cosmo. I can see 4 sidewinders, but yeah, unfortunately, I fortunately have that, but I don't think that list is has as much legs as people say it is. Maybe if Fane and Chimera continue to do well and they're just like free chicken in those matchups, but
yeah,
playing them into certain things, like they do no damage. It's insanity.
Just POW 13. I mean, yeah, if they're not shooting at flying models, they're basically just like infantry mulchers. Like they become very expensive hailers. Fortunately, like they're not bad at it, but yeah, they're just another guy with a machine gun mulching dudes. Ugh. All right. Well, that wraps us on the Dusk stuff. Let's talk about how would you broach this topic? Because I've been sort of characterizing it as like, you know, a sort of more psychological spin on who's the beatdown. But I don't know if that's the best way of explaining it. So a few weeks ago, you know, we were talking about like the way people play and different like modalities for engaging with the game. You know, whether you like them, it's like at the conjunction of who's the beatdown, player psychology, and play style. um where, you know, some people want to be in the driver's seat, maximum agency the whole time, minimum agency for their opponent. Some people just like to push models across the board and say you deal with it, and some people like to have like a bit of a, you know, a messy mid game, like, okay, we'll do our openings, we'll do our closings, but what I really live for is like inflicting complex novel scenarios that, you know, I'm gonna out navigate you on the mid game. And you had this sort of theory for interplay between these, and identifying them both in other players and in yourself as growth areas. Is that a fair way of characterizing this, you know, conceptual nugget here, or am I misstating everything?
I mean, I definitely would have said it better than you, apparently. Your way to break down a lot of these concepts amazes me. That's way more thought than I put into it. But I'd say that's a pretty accurate representation of what it is. It's, to me, it's more of like identifying your style of play in the grand scheme of War Machine, and then breaking it down into like 3 larger categories to play in, and trying to find an army or a play style in those 3 that suits you. Because I think the topic originally started on like playing an army or finding an army that matches your style. And I feel like a lot of players gravitate towards aesthetic based choices and not the gameplay based. So then they find themselves in like a slump at War Machine because they're stuck with models they think look really cool, but they don't jive with the play style, and it leads them to have lower performing results.
Well, I think there's a couple of vectors to that. I mean, I think you're right. A lot of people do make aesthetic decisions as sort of their primary, you know, when selecting a faction or something like that. But it definitely can lock you into a way or mode of playing that, you know, I think there's 2 levels to it. You know, one is an unappealing power fantasy, like you have a vision for how like the gameplay fantasy of this is supposed to come off. And I think a lot of players were initially, you know, about a year ago, actually quite disappointed with Gravediggers, because they had a fantasy of it's going to be my boys in the trenches, and it turns out like, no, this is actually not a let them have it lads faction. This is a high finesse warjack faction. You know, and if you went in expecting one thing, like you didn't get that thing. You know, so there's like, or God help somebody who picked up Brine Bloods to experience the same magic of classic trolls. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry, buddy, this ain't for you. But you know, on another level to that, there is the way we either like to play or are habituated to play, and whether or not the army lends themselves to that. And you know, I think like there's a lot of ways of saying this throughout the ages, but like, you know, the pan teaches your hand how to fry, the knife teaches your hand how to cut. The tools you use can really inform how your skills develop. You know, analogously, like the desk dictates the maximum bandwidth for human throughput, like the physical size of the desk. Tools will teach you how to use them, and using an army, like it can be that, you know, either the army doesn't jive with what you like, or it does jive with what you like, or that it can lock you into a way of playing that's like, you know, maybe different from what you thought, or that you can use it as a positive educational tool to like teach your brain how to play War Machine differently. Does that capture it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely towards the end of what you were saying is the end goal of what I was wanting to explain is that identifying how you're playing and why you're playing the way, and as if the army is almost making you that play that way, and then moving on to either being a player who identifies how you're playing and how to adjust it, or moving on to an army that fits more your style.
Right. And everyone sort of has like pathological ways that they've learned how to play, like, deeply, deep grooves in their mind for, like, the wagons pass this way a lot of times. It's very easy to go in that direction. um you know and oh gosh, um I'm just thinking. I guess I want to ask you, because when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, you had a really clearly developed picture, particularly for talking about some of our famous friends, who've been quite successful at this game, and they have uh you know people know how they like to play. They know how they like to play, and you see it a lot. And there's sort of these three different, maybe an oversimplification, but three broad categories for how people will bring a mindset to the game, um and how it jives with the tools that they use, and then that there's actually like a bit of a rock paper scissors dynamic between these different styles. So like, I guess walk me through, like, how did you sort of start to come to awareness of or articulate this, say, in your play experience against Ryan and other people local to you, and sort of how would you categorize, like, how would you describe the three categories of, like, like modes of play, or habitual modes of play, that people can be taught to play by the tools they're using?
Yeah, so this is a long one, so I'm going to talk for a hot minute. So in playing War Machine, I've always been a player who wants to kind of bait my opponent into certain predicaments that I think are favorable towards me, right? Or put models forward. I know that they have to send models to deal with them, knowing that I can send models to deal with them, right? It's just general piece trading, but a little bit more layering on the specific like baiting section of it. But in that, by playing that, and by playing Ryan Charaboga, I've noticed the specifics of like different players' archetypes and like what styles they prefer, or what more they're willing to play in if they're in an uncomfortable position. So in your like three broad categories, it's almost like a rock paper scissors, and there's no real specific. This is all like just my theory I made up, right? Or I've just noticed, but there's no actual
Mhm,
definitive outcome that rock beats scissors in this equation. But
mhm,
assuming that the rock player is the player who wants to do the piece trading, wants to set up like certain predicaments for your opponents, or certain knots for them to unravel, right? Those are the players that I find myself, and a lot of other just general players, right? I feel like it's like the largest category of players is the players who want to do piece trading, who want to basically play a game of chess, put pieces forward, take pieces, right?
mhm.
Ryan Cherboga, who I play with often, he he's not that player at all, and it infuriates me. The closest I've ever been to like not wanting to play War Machine is playing against that guy, because if Ryan's in an uncomfortable position, he doesn't know what to do, he just backs up, right? He commits as much to the scenario element as he needs to stay in the game, and pressures it in a way that doesn't allow you to freely take scenario and just win the game. But he's just more than willing to back up and wait, right? And that's continuing on with the rock paper scissors. That'd be more like your scissors or paper, whichever one you want to assign to it, where, well, I guess if rock was piece trading, this would be paper in my equation, right? Because I think piece trading has a very hard time into matchups where your opponents just fail to commit, right? And or purposely fail to commit because they're not putting models forward that they know is an unfavorable trade, which kind of
Mhm.
puts the piece trading player on the back foot. So Ryan is very much like he plays these long threat extension armies like Tyrus or
Yeah.
Seraphil double colossal or Helith double colossal is what he played a
Yeah.
lot. So
Yeah. He's over the last year and a half sort of run the who's who of like standoffish, come and get me,
Yep.
like
So
good
he's more
luck
than willing to just
casters.
back up and just wait for the perfect turn to engage your models. And a lot of players, including me in the beginning, I just overextend trying to apply more pressure and put your foot on the throat, and he just then collides his entire army into you. And a lot of time that's pretty backbreaking. So he's more like a perfection or like a perfect turn player is like what I've categorized it as, where he
Yeah,
will literally
perfect turn
wait
player.
to the perfect turn. And I see a lot of that in like Gravedigger players are naturally perfect turn players because they're playing a very high skill ceiling, high skill floor, dominant shooting army where you have to have like target awareness, or you have to know what models have the value on the table to put all of your models into. So a lot of Gravedigger players like Brandon Owens I see as like perfect turns. Not to continue to bridge this, but the difference between like Brandon Owens playing Gravediggers and other players playing Gravediggers is that Brandon Owens subconsciously, consciously knows when to then turn it over from the perfect turn into peace trading and to commit the minimal amount of melee models that Gravediggers has to continue playing the game, right? And so that goes into what you were saying of like identifying your play style, identifying your opponent's play style, and how to adapt to it.
I would almost say it's like, when Brandon commits to melee, it's almost like like one of those lizards releasing their tail, just like letting it go, or like
Yep.
an octopus letting a tentacle go. Like, no, we're going to continue to keep away. This organ is just the price of my escape.
Exactly. That is what Gravediggers is about. They have like 4 melee models in the army, so when you give up one of them, you're pretty out on that category. So
yeah, but it's the high cost of getting to reassert, like, okay, I'm going to blitz down this one thing that you sent, and now we're going to go back to playing my very slow, give up nothing, meticulous game.
Yep,
where I have 100% of the agency and you have 0%.
Yep, I'm gonna win this game. I'm winning on turn 6. I'm just gonna stall this out until it's favorable for me, or until you overcommit, and I know you overcommit because I've played this matchup, right? And that's a lot of like with this player archetype or play style archetype is just waiting for the moment to literally apply all the pressure you can and close out games, or knowing that by applying small pressure throughout the game, you can close it out turn 6 or 7, or even just death clocking your opponent, which kind of goes more into the last category of these 3, which is, I guess, the last one would be scissors, right? And it's the old Magic saying where like blockings or math is for the defenders or math is for the blockers, right? And it's just when you get to a point where it's either you don't know the matchup, or you're uncomfortable, you don't know what to do, or you know everything, right? You're the Brad Park of this example, where you know what your models do, how they survive, and how this matchup works, and you shove your Dark Ops forward, right? And you are literally playing a grinding game. So they're more of the putting models on objectives and like forcing your opponent to react. And so going back to Ryan, who I play with a lot, and I know a lot of his mannerisms, he loses a lot to these players because he backs up with minimal commit, right? And then these players are like, well, I don't know what to do now. I'm uncomfortable, or I do know what to do now because you backed up. I'm going to put my entire army on these scenario elements, and I'm going to lock it out right now. I'm not going to give you the chance to do this slow grind. Like the game's going to end now because I'm going to go up 40 or 1, and there's no way you'll get, like, you can't stop my back objective, so I'm getting 1. So there's no way you're going to close it out to that 3-5 to keep this game going. And a lot of games follow these archetypes that I've seen. It's not all foolproof, but just noticing these things as I play. A lot of it comes down to just piece trading, but it was when I was sitting in Ryan's living room playing a game of War Machine, and I was like, dang, I had no agency in this game. I just every bit of it, I couldn't catch him. He was just moving around, and then my head gets collapsed in by Dusk Cavalry threading 14, the Linus Arissel's Cats in Dusk, dragging,
Right.
where they have below, and so there's just so much repositioning. I couldn't catch him, and it felt bad, and it kept feeling bad. Or his double
Mhm.
fossils out threading me, but also not allowing me to commit enough into them to actually do meaningful damage. And it slowly taught me that these archetypes are there. It's just
Yeah.
more of how you as a player react to them or adjust to them in game.
Yeah. It's man. I think we live very much in the same kind of archetype, like that piece trading. Actually, if we were to do analogies, I think we shift the rock paper scissors somewhat, because the just full send at your
Yeah,
opponent
is the
and
rock.
put
Yep.
100% of the mental burden on them. That guy's rock.
Yeah, it's rock, and then the scissors would be the perfect player, and the paper would be the piece trader. Is kind of what I've assigned to it in
Yeah.
my own figurative world I live in with War Machine.
But it's really interesting, because I think you'll also learn a good amount about yourself by, like, if somebody's out there listening and hears this discussion, you will have instinctive emotional reactions to all these categories, and that will tell you a lot about where you are. um because I've been, like, right there with you, like, like in games against Brandon, for instance, where it's like, aha, I'm gonna play this game with you, and Brandon's like, no, you're not. Like,
No, I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna
yeah.
I'm gonna shift everything here. I'm gonna kill these 3 models so you can't win this turn, and then we're gonna play another turn and another
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah, and then it's like turn 2, and then increasingly plaintively every turn after that, like, please play this game with me.
Yeah, exactly. And then with that, the big part of this is identifying what style you like and what's best for you, and then finding the army that does it. Because if you're like a perfectionist player, right, or the perfect turn, and you want to have these like long out threats or these like high commit or low commit in certain scenarios, but being able to highly commit your army to shift to a side to like basically cut off a flank or to just kill models that are annoying on a certain side and force the game to go from like north south to east west, right? You have to
Mhm.
find these armies because being a Brian's player, like you don't have that opportunity. So if you're not having success with Brian Bloods because you're waiting for these perfect turns, then it might be that you need to adjust your like mental archetype on like what you're
Yeah.
attempting to do in this game, or find an army that more like that better suits it. And I think Gravediggers is like a big example, and a Dusk or like Chimera, who are these like long bomb armies, or just a shooting army in general for Crucible Guard or for Gravediggers. And then just know these archetypes, know how they fit in to what you're doing and what you want to achieve.
Mhm. Mhm. Wait, it's I think where the rubber meets the road is, like, a lot of people will naturally gravitate toward what's appealing to them, and that works great depending on what spot you're at in your journey. Like, if you're an apprentice just coming up in this game, like, maybe the most impactful thing for you to hear here is that certain armies will deliver on certain game experiences, and that your first army is your army that teaches you how you're going to play the game by default. um so probably pick something that sounds appealing to you, and consult your old heads to get a real clear sense of what that will be. If you're a journeyman, it's probably like, like really really deepening that groove, and finding your depth in play style. And if you're on the part of the journey to master, I think where it starts getting wild is like, okay, how I've been playing paper or scissors for a long time. Let's learn how to play rock. And let's get my rock repertoire, like, really really developed. I think there's actually more juice in there for the journeyman level, which is being aware of the dynamics and why you have this sort of rock paper scissors dynamic to it. I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago, talking to another mutual friend of ours, Chris Zabrowski from the greater Phoenix area. We were both at a tournament down in Tucson, and he mentioned a very obscure Magic the Gathering article, which I still have to pull up and go through in some detail. But I think it was called like "What Time Is It?" or something like that. It's like it's using a clock visual metaphor, and say at at noon is like red deck wins, goblin beatdown, and then at maybe I'm mixing up the categories, but like say at like noon and 4 and 8 you have like red deck wins, like white blue control, and then like some color combo like green mid range, and you beat the lists that are after you, or you beat the decks that are after you on the clock.
Yep. It's like a different form of rock paper scissors, just Magic has a lot more layers to it.
Yeah. So
I'm trying to find the article right now.
The dynamic of why it works this way in War Machine is like, peace trade sort of is, or I'm betraying my psychological biases here and saying it's the default for the game, but I think, we will meet players for whom it is not, what they consider playing War Machine. But I think you're right to observe that like this sort of mid-rangey peace trade, play like chess philosophy is the default for most people. I take your piece, which means you take my piece, which means I take your piece, and you go back and forth until somebody wins. The total control beats that essentially by refusing to play that game and forcing you to overextend. And then the full send players, the math is for blockers, tends to beat and flummox that kind of player, because they're not playing the game the way that play style implicitly expects the game to be played. And just saying like, particularly like people will see full send strategies like, oh, I'm just going to jam you, I'm just going to run all my pieces at you, and again have this instinctive reaction like, that's not really War Machine, that's not like sophisticated strategy. Except it actually is, especially when somebody's really matured in this. Like they know where the margins and tolerances are. Mm-hmm. They know where the overwhelming
there is. It is.
Yeah, there. I don't think that's the exact one, but that's definitely like the sort of the heart of the dynamic that the clock article like goes to describe in in some more depth.
I can send the actual one to you.
Okay.
I sent you the flock reference in the article. It is probably the worst photo of it imaginable, but
yeah,
it was just a copy and paste.
Okay, so it's called Watching the Clock.
Yeah, if you want to send that to Bruce or Keith, maybe that. I don't know. This one kind of looks a bit more.
Yeah, let me.
A bit more involved than the simple monkey machine I was trying to play.
Yeah, we'll have to. I think so. I'm not necessarily prepared to go into this in depth right now, but we'll definitely have to, go back. I'll give this article a read, and then we'll, I think, come back at this. But the dynamic of why full send works, and Keith, I just sent that to you on Discord. The dynamic of why full send works is you're not giving them enough time to run this very careful, very elaborate game and maintain position. If you are playing with a peace trading mindset, you are keeping things in reserve, so that you can go the long distance. Yeah. Oh, it's super low resolution and tiny too.
Oh, you double click on it. Click on it again. There you go. Now it's even more,
even more
lower.
Blown out.
Yeah, even lower resolution, but it's not that small.
Yeah.
So it shows more like a flow chart, I guess, in the representation of a clock, of where if you were the beatdown opponent and the top left, or Beatdown player in the top left, you always want to play Beatdown in the time associated with the clock where the meta game is ahead of you. So that way you're beating the mid game in the combo, and the time's not all the way over to the aggro control, which is underneath it. So I assume what the article was going into. And I don't, that thankfully, in some ways, War Machine doesn't have like a natural flow the same way Magic does, where there are certain decks that are so prevalent and so powerful and have such a strong archetype that you are able to literally play the opposing archetype that naturally beats it, right? If blue-white control is super dominant, then you can play the hyper aggro deck to beat them out and like turn the meta over. But in War Machine, it's a little bit more finesse than that level of whatever is performing very well at the time, right? Old Umbre is like the 61% win rate army right now, but what beats Old Umbre? Like it's a lot more limited.
Yeah, and it's variable too, because like you know, or some Old Umbre armies like Aslanov, like, well, we can just roll slow and be real careful and pick this guy apart. Because while he has control effects, the way this guy actually plays is, much more in your face, and there's a lot of onus on him to get this game won. So we can go slow and pick him apart, or you can run into somebody like oh god, what's his name? Morozov, yeah, where it's just like, I'm going to run a billion bazillion dorks at you.
Yeah. And these bazillion dorks are going to turn into more models that you can't commit to.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so on the 2-list pairing level, there's a lot going on. And then you have Bodan, who's like the quintessential like mid-range powerhouse. Yeah, it's and man, there's a fundamental Magic War Machine division, which is a lot of people get into War Machine from Magic.
Yes.
Particularly seeing and liking the combos.
Exactly. Yep.
But explaining like, okay, War Machine does have these very tightly written rules and all these interactive combos and layers to build buffs and like seek self-expression through, this avenue of play. But actually, at the end of the day, like what's really determinative of success is positioning. This is a positional game. And
it's a positional game that's like fundamentally different from almost any other tabletop when it comes to like what you're doing in this position and how you get there. And I feel like War Machine itself does naturally grab card game players more than it does like 40K or other large tabletop games because of like the scaling difference. And then like you're saying, the layering and the combo, and it's almost as if Magic players enjoy when rules just don't make sense. Like how like when you have to like sit there and write on paperwork how the layering of this role works is when like Magic players are listening. And I feel like War Machine gets more involved with that than other games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, with the timing steps for effects and the counterplay on the technology level. I mean, I'm always one to say like, you can counter on tech level, but you should probably try and counter on positional level first, because if you're trying to counter something with tech, often what you'll wind up doing, like it may work, but you may be like selling your pair down the river. Like I remember way back when like Scorn used to have a nightmare time with Crix. And I was like, well, I'll just play Hexeris 1, who has like an RFP and takeover feat and all these things, like all these, abilities that are really good against Crix. And like, I'll solve my Crix problem. Except Hexeris is bad in everything else. So I guess my pairing just sucks. And the actual answer was like, nah, you just need to learn how to beat Crix with your Rasheth 4 Titan list.
Yep.
So there's the technology and the rules mechanics are one layer there. And I guess what we're talking about here when it comes to like peace traders, perfect turners, and full senders, these are all positional plays. A lot of people will tend to view like, peace trading as the default, and then maybe perfect turn as like the acme of excellence in War Machine. And then, and again, this is a psychological self-report, not necessarily universal. And then full send as a bit brutish, but like also as somebody who's had to full send for a long time, there is serious strategic depth to it, and like actually a fair amount of consideration that goes into, establishing the right time and place to say, oh, you're going to play this hyper cautious game where you just like, stay back and, like sucker punch me if I play forever. Here's everything all at once because I know you'll choke on it.
And I think
I know in order to kill, you often can't stand on the most important parts of the board that I'm standing on. So like you have to give up your army or the scenario. It's a sophisticated play that actually you have to fight your instincts to do.
I think that goes back to what you're saying with the whole apprentice journeyman and the pursuit to master. Is a lot of times people who are newer to the game typically take a very aggressive approach, and they start leaning into the full sends and the I don't know what to do, so put models places kind of a idea. And there is some success in that, and then there's some not. Like then there's a lot of just absolute beatdowns, and then makes you think into the next game or the 10 games later. So after doing this, you realize that you're being too aggressive, and then you play hyper cautious, right? And then you start being this like perfect turn where you just won't engage in scenario play or into a piece trading aspect until you feel like until you're comfortable with it, and it starts showing a lot of player comfortability and player skill and just like matchup knowledge, game knowledge, just all of it in one of where you put yourself on this archetype list and what level you are when you get there. And then when you find your comfort zone and you start choosing that you want to be a player who plays in a certain archetype, how you can play into other players. But the comfortability for players definitely leans into doing what feels right in the moment. And sometimes it's being too cautious that loses you games, or sometimes that's being too aggressive that loses you games. And then even for piece traders, like putting models forward you think your opponents will have a hard time piece trading into, and they just absolutely like rip their heads off, and you lost a unit for super cheap. A unit of wardens comes in at mat 9 POW 17 and tears your 14-point warjack apart, and you're like, well, I don't know how I can like piece trade with that. Like, you're 7 points up now. So
that's oh, excuse me. That's an interesting thing. That almost on your way up, like in the apprentice phase, you actually pass through all three of these spaces as a matter of normal development. But you pass through in like in sort of a naive way at first. Was it Ezra Pound or T.S. Eliot? I think it was T.S. Eliot talking about poetry as a first love, when you're like a young man and like creative expression and stuff like that. This artistic medium is a love for you, but in a sort of naive way. And then as you mature, you come back to it again as a second love, where experiencing poetry as a grown-ass man with some miles on you hits very, very different, and your engagement and expression in it hits very different. Like, so as an apprentice, you will go through, you won't know what you're doing, you'll be full sending, and then you'll go over cautious and hit a sort of naive perfect turn play, and then you'll arrive at sort of a naive peace trader. And I feel like a lot of people build out from naive peace trader to peace trader by default, just sociologically right now.
Sometimes
it's interesting because I was also thinking about this, like, I'm gonna take an old manism and give you a back in my day. But when I was first coming up on the competitive circuit, Death Clock was not universal, and time turns was still the norm. At least for the first several years that I was on the circuit. And one, like, there's almost a sociological like difference in trajectory, I think, now versus 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago with Death Clock, everybody was a full send guy by default. And that was sort of like, the majority default line of play that people would think, like, what does proper War Machine look like? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, I see what you mean.
But yeah, I mean, returning to the there's lessons at different layers here, and I think the knife teaching your hand to cut, one for me and where I'm at in my journey, and one of the reasons this has been sort of gripping. I think I told you this story about God, I'm such an old man. Like, Cosma has like 4 stories at this point. But prepping for WTC in 22 and trying to play Crucible Guard, trying to play Crucible Guard because at the time it was the best thing in the metagame, and I was playing Crucible Guard in the model of Brandon Owens. So we're talking like, full on Lucas, like double trains, give nothing away, take everything, very, very meticulous play. I found it profoundly grating. And under the timetable of, having to be ready with a new faction in, like 9 months or whatever it was, it's like, am I actually going to rise to the level of more than just competent at this faction? Am I actually going to be good enough with it in time, to distinguish myself, on behalf of my team and actually be playing at the level they need? And the decision I made at the time was, not if I get there and have any desire left to play this game. And, I've sort of looked back on that decision and thought, like, I think what I did was right for the time, but I find myself constantly like, man, at some point in the intervening 4 years, I really should have taken the plunge and learned to play War Machine like Brandon or Ryan do, and it's hitting me as like a lacking, because like it or not, your play style is often pathological. It's a way that you learn to do things, and the grooves are dug real deep, and by God, you don't want to change, or changing like doesn't feel good. But in order to win in a broad range of contexts, you really need to be comfortable operating in a wide range of modalities. That makes sense too? Like, or am I just like getting overly flouncy?
Your way of breaking things down is definitely above me sometimes. But I definitely see where you're going. Playing outside your box, although can teach you things, it also can teach you how miserable it can be, or how much it's not your style.
That's true.
And in team events, being forced to play outside your style is definitely not advantageous to the team's goal.
Well, I would say though, like, Miyamoto Musashi, like legendary great swordsman, was also a hardcore advocate of do not have a favorite weapon. If you have a favorite weapon, if you have a way you need to play, it can weaken you overall.
He didn't say to not have a least favorite weapon, right? And
I suppose that's true.
Yours just so happens to be Crucible Guard, and we know it.
Well, it's an interesting thing because I've started playing this new Boggity Bomb list, which is very, very, very bizarre. I think this is. I'll bring it up just on the screen share, just so the audience can have a context of how bizarre this army list is.
It's a doozy of a list.
the purpose of this is not a dojo session. This is just to give you a taste of like,
It does
you
not
know,
have surgeons. It doesn't even have models that feel criminal to not take. And Brian's, my camera is hating it that I shift around too much, but it's my ADHD apparently. There we go. I don't know if it looks as
wait,
bad.
why is it? Oh, it's showing my Discord. Oh, geez.
Oh,
Stupid.
Matt Man hit you up.
Yeah. Let's see. Share screen, window, War Machine app. Yeah, there we go.
He's a popular guy. You wouldn't understand.
How many unread messages? No, it's actually that I join a bunch of servers that I like never check. J Beatnik, you should see my unread email count.
Just mark all those red, dude. None of that shit's important.
I had a sabbatical at work, and I came back to like on the day I came back and logged into my my email account a couple of years ago, it was sitting at exactly 40,000 unread emails. I'm just sitting there like, nice.
It's your kitten chewing on your beard.
But yeah, so this is sort of what I've switched to playing. You know, not a dojo session, just I've become increasingly frustrated with Marauder Crew and their failure to realize value on multiple angles in the current metagame. So we think, what if we just abandon them and just go big ultra premium battle group, a couple of battle brigs, support models, and you know, just try and play that way. And what I've found is, you know, I wasn't necessarily spouting off about this list because it was literally revealed to me in a dream, and I needed to, you know, like make sure I wasn't just going to sound like a crazy person. But you know, what I found, you know, when I started testing this list in earnest and playing it regularly, is that this is actually like in Brine Bloods, it is actually that kind of high strung Crucible Guard-esque, Brandon-esque type army list. There's not a lot of redundancy. There's not a lot of models that you can just like put out there and say, you know, okay, go ahead and trade with this, because like essentially my smallest module that is actually going to trade. Oh yes, Stephen Williams. We had a league game on Sunday morning. That was a great game, Stephen. But yeah, I've been playing this and I've actually been super pleased because it's like, oh my God, it's my chance to actually take on, you know, learning this perfect turn mentality and being very careful and fastidious in with my resources in a way that I have not been in a long time, versus like in years past, you know, I was playing like Boom Howler, who's like full send / peace trade, and Shadow Tongue, who's like, you know, the ultimate mid-range control caster. Like, this is very different for me. And, you know, I'm treating it actually as like a big opportunity, because even though like, because I am having fun versus like Crucible Guard, I'm not having fun. And if I can learn to play that way and have fun while doing it, like, that's great. You know, it'll make transitioning to, you know, other armies as the meta changes easier. You know, or it'll just mean like, you know, I got another tool in my arsenal to, you know, to play different matchups.
Do you think a lot of the success in this list, or your desire to have success playing it, derives from the idea of not playing Marauder Crew inside of Brine Bloods?
It is real nice not playing Marauder Crew. I do get pleasure from their absence.
Yeah, like almost trying to be a Pathfinder in this, or not Pathfinder, a Forerunner, whatever that's called. Like developing your own meta, finding things out other people aren't playing. I try to do that with a lot of armies, but I've never seen anything like this. And when you initially sent it in our chat the morning of, it was being revealed to you in a dream. It did not seem like this list would have a lot of legs. but it's definitely interesting.
Mhm.
Shows a lot of what Scuttlebutt can do, dragging around the Briggs and whatnot.
Yeah. And Scuttlebutt like just benefits. The more times that model gets to move, the better he is. Like his power level scales with movement abilities, which is really remarkable.
It's every time he makes an advance. So if he enlivens, he drags. Is that the idea?
It's once per turn. Once per turn when he advances. So he can do it on your opponent's turn on an enliven move as well. It's not even as straightforward as it's necessarily just hold on, lads, because Scuttlebutt is actually like base speed 5, but he's really resistant to shooting. He has utility support abilities. He's baseline quite slow, like off the off the starting line. He doesn't win any drag races. But what he does, and he doesn't hit like substantially harder than like a minnow anchor dire troll. But what he does do is if he can move around that like that gigantic body of hit points and base size and support rules and reposition it very rapidly across different theaters of the board, that's actually kind of amazing. So like, yeah, hold on, lads has a lot of power and synergy with out of activation movements and so forth. But what actually really makes this guy sing is just his ability to reposition around the board is very, very potent. And the more you enable him to do more of that kind of move, the better he gets.
Fair.
Oh god, they still have the Kithgard faction logo error.
Oh, they all,
huh?
all of them do.
God, I don't know why that's why that's not working, but yeah, it at all ends like that's been interesting for me, having to because this army doesn't really have a front line. The closest thing it does is use the king to like stall a flank. Like, the king threats 14 inches, can threat 16. He's armed 22 against range, 24 against melee. What are you going to do about this? Oh, avoid it and make this flank take as long as possible. Great. I'm gonna have the king hold you guys down, and this is going to go real slow, and you're not going to try anything crazy, and then everything else is going to go fight the rest of your army. And but even on the everything else goes and fights the rest of your army, like, yeah, Scuttlebutt's tanky to range, battle brigs have flying high, but there's no front line. I'm never carving out a position and saying, here I am, and I will come get your piece, and then you will get my piece. It's like, either I'm going to roll you up with lots of AoEs and just blow you up very, very quickly, or, you are never going to touch me until I get to blow you up very, very quickly. And it's been interesting in the context of this discussion, like realizing I'm forcing myself to expand again. I mean, I guess the turnaround question is, having had this insight on your part, what has been the biggest revelation or change in your play since beginning to articulate this and explore it?
From beginning of my play and this season, and like my new faction that I've chosen, like what
yeah, where's the rubber meeting the road for you? And I mean, I guess, what part of your journey do you feel like you're on, and how is this how is this how is this showing up contextually in your world? Like, are you deepening grooves, or are you looking for the next exploration point?
That's really fair. So previously, before that list you just showed, it felt like to me and the other people in that Discord group we have, the Tucson people, that you had a lot of problems with Brian Bloods, that you just weren't happy with their position, and because you're forced to take Marauders, and because Marauders are such a high point investment to sometimes kill things, sometimes not, and then your only access to doubling down is just a second unit Marauder crews. And you mentioned you had a lot of turmoil with that style of play, and that the army leans into. So for me, I was playing Storm Legion all last year. I was playing Kane and Huxley. Both of them are. Huxley was an insane caster back then, and Kane was somehow less insane. And then moving into this year, I continued Storm Legion, and it felt like I was just always on the back foot, that I had to play all my games at like such a higher level than my opponent to achieve very little advantages, right? It just never felt like I was really winning a game until the game was over. So that feeling made me strongly dislike playing War Machine at the time. And it was when I was playing against Ryan at the beginning of the year, seeing these archetypes, understanding them, and then noticing that it could be me, it could be my army. And how many? Wow, just swapped it out. It's like a pit swap. But yeah, just at the beginning of the year, seeing that my army just had no play into what he was doing, and having a lot of just I don't know, turmoil with the game, just not liking War Machine at the time. It pushed me to try something else. So I moved over to Gift Guard. I bought
when your regular play partner is also playing something that is not only like, you know, difficult for your play preference mind to deal with, he's also absolutely got your number on like a faction and composition layer. Like that can be a tough experience. Storm Legion's also just been a tough experience for a while now.
Yeah, and I was at the time, my only armies were Storm Legion, Gravediggers, Khador, were the three I had, which is a lot of armies to own, but they all did the same thing. Be under 46% win rate. That's like what they did best. So I just didn't feel like anything I could put on the table was doing what I wanted it to do. It felt like I was just like really trying to innovate in a underplayed, underrepresented army, and that's where I built that Athena list that I was having some success with, that ran like, I mean, what was it? I think it was like 44 points worth of mercenaries, classic Mark III Signar, right? So I just enjoy it, and I moved over to Kithgard, and that's where I started to notice like all the time and effort I put into the play style I was doing with Storm Legion and the minimal results I was receiving, I was able to like exponentially grow with the faction, and I'm finding a lot of success with the army. I'm doing well with them, and that's kind of where I started to notice like where they're like you're saying, where the rubber hits the road, where like I've put all this training in quotes, because it's a tabletop game, but like, you know, the classic Rock Lee moment where he takes off the ankle weights, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say you took off the training weights.
Exactly, I took off the ankle weights. That was Storm Legion. I got to play a faction that wasn't designed to like in 2023, and it just is a whole different experience. And whether or not it's that Kithgard's a better faction or that they match my play style better is like undetermined. But
it's a better faction.
It is a better faction. That's not an argument. Does it fit my play style better? It's just more of a personal thing for me, and I think so. I think the army does what I want it to do. I want to play these peace trading games, and the thing about Kithgard is that it forces your opponent to initiate these. Like, I can put my trapdoors in a position where if you want to interact with them, you are now playing the peace trading game. And a lot of times it baits players into just putting themselves in positions to initiate this, whether or not they want to be the perfect turn or the what would you say, the perfect turn and push models forward,
full send.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. So,
but it's interesting because like, you know, one of the failings, particularly of some older Mark IV armies, is like, especially after the removal of spell rack, the casters are actually kind of generic under the hood unless they've received a substantial rework. And you know, and that's just because of design decisions that were made at the start of the edition with the assumption of spell rack and a number of other things. But they do feel that way. And that often means there's clear winners and losers. Like, some of them are just bad and there's nothing you can do about it. and there's often, because they have this rack imposed homogeneity, there's often not a variety of options in the faction. I mean, I think I've said this a million times, but Gravediggers has the problem of having 4 casters that are functionally indistinguishable. It's like the Pam, like, corporate needs to find you to find the difference between these 4 casters. They're the same caster.
There's no difference. Yep.
Um,
They're
like Kithgard has real variety, and
yes.
I think it has sufficient variety to honestly, like, because when I was talking with John Damaris about this, like, I didn't have the language at the time, but like him coming in on Malice Rotmore, and I'm like, oh man, this is like a perfect turn catering list. And like, John's an old protectorate gunline control guy, like right up his alley. But like, I naturally gravitate toward like Tarja Grimtusk. And in the main, these casters aren't bad. They aren't. None of them leaves you with something unplayable. I mean, so you switched into something that lets you, like, take the training weights off and realize, the maturation of your skill set. Where are you finding that skill set is getting expressed most in this faction? And, is there anything you still feel like is limiting you?
I don't know. I don't know how close I have to be to my mic so you can hear me. But where I see it coming in is I play a lot of Stormcraw. I think he's just the best caster in the faction. Best caster, probably more towards like a generalist aspect. I'm sure he has glaring weaknesses, but as a all-comers list, I feel like he just provides the most. And he also offers a lot of different builds depending on like what you personally enjoy in the faction. But playing the types of games I played with Storm Legion and leading into this caster, his whole dynamic and what he provides the army, like I was trying to say, it forces your opponent to play the game you want to. And it's it's almost like reverse Rotmorn feat, where Rotmorn says like, you can't engage me, right? Stormcraw's feat says you can't engage me unless you really engage me, right? And being able to place the trapdoors in front of your front line, using your feet to saying like, I'm going to threat 13 inches from these trapdoors, and I position them into a point where like your only option is to back up off scenario, or but then you're not in range of my front line, right? So now I have this phantom middle line that you have to respect. Do you back up, or do you run models to stop the feat? And in a lot of scenarios, it comes down to like my opponent's decision on how they interact with the feat. And certain players, like I've played against Brandon, and he did it perfectly and just denied me both aspects, which was very upsetting, and I lost that game horrifically. But a lot of players can't commit, right? They don't have the proper list selection, or didn't even have a list in their pairing that can both commit to stopping his feat and maintaining a proper board state to where you can play out of having all those units that were sacrificed to stop it. So he's just the one I've been exploring the most. He feels the most of like what I want to do. I was playing Rotmorn, and I was talking to you about it. I strongly dislike her because she just doesn't match my style. Right? Sure. I'm not a perfect turn player, and you talking about how she kind of feels like a perfect turn player model inside of a different faction is very unique. And hopefully they like continue to pursue the different archetypes in SFG's own way of how to break down factions differently internally, rather than having like broad archetypes that the faction sticks to. But I see myself a lot where I enjoy Grimtusk, I enjoy Stormcraw. I've been play testing Gumbjorn. He seems very cool. I like him, but I'm trying to branch out into other things, try some Craghorn. That's what I've been trying to look into. But
he seems like he's stuck over there waiting for the Fortress King. I don't know if that's been your experience, but he seems to really want that guy.
Yeah, I don't really know what he wants. I look at him and everybody says he's an assassination caster, which having a pocket heavy to just literally like throw at your opponent's caster is pretty menacing. But I feel like what he and Stormclaw does is is just a little too similar, which makes you not want to put them in a pair. And if you're going to have a pair, it normally starts with Stormclaw or Grim Tusk even, right? And I don't know, Crackhorn just doesn't really feel like he is a good generalist caster or a good pairing with them.
You mean it doesn't start with your most powerful and most flexible warcaster, Boggity Bomb?
Oh man, don't get me started. Yeah. Did you see that? Okay, I don't want to talk about it, but yeah,
I did. I mean, he's not bad in the faction.
No, but not picking. I don't know. To me, playing a caster who doesn't have Earthworks just feels like you're starting the army off wrong. And I'm sure Boggity Bomb is going to get a lot better with the introduction of the Fortress King and maybe Dozer, whatever he does, but definitely the Fortress King, just starting with that starting the game with at least one trapdoor being the king is a lot better than 0. Well, but the problem is the other casters who want to take the Fortress King are now going to start with 4 trapdoors instead of, Boggity's 1. But
it's complicated. It's complicated. I don't know that he loves a Colossal in Kithgard necessarily. And part of the reason he loves one in Brine Bloods is specifically because that Colossal speed 6.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I'd be if the Fortress King is speed 4, I wouldn't be surprised. And I know there's a lot of talk out there. I know there's a lot of talk out there of like his stats are ready.
Don't curse me with that evil Ricky Bobby.
But just looking at the size of him and what he's carrying, if that model was speed 4, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's gonna have a 3-inch reach axe, so he's gonna threat 10. Like 11 is, I don't know. It definitely matters on what it does and what he provides, but he seems like he's more of a support piece based on what has been teased for him. More of a support piece, I say, is that he probably has a POW 23 axe or something crazy, but he definitely. Kithgard feels like a faction that is operating very well right now, but is still at like 80% released. Like the king changes a lot of dynamics, and it also depends on what the 80mm who's supposedly Dozer and or Smig. I don't know if he's still around.
Smig is, yeah.
I don't know if they said Dozer. I don't know if Dozer and Smig are still here, but at least Dozer is. But a lot of things.
We're seeing Dozer post divorce.
Yeah. Yeah, the 2-house build. Yeah, I look at Crackhorn and he has a tuned spirit to cast a Animus for free once per turn, and I look through every Warbeast Animus and I'm like, none of these are great. Like I could have Swift Hunter, I could have Repo, but I have to pay for a very expensive Jungle Troll, but nothing else really feels that great. Like
I think it's just low key that like he can flamey fist for free and beat POW 17 sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes he's as strong as Stormcraw's base.
Or actually, like I think what a lot of people wind up doing is just like or just spiny growth.
Yeah. But he has decent options.
Yeah, he is just hitting Stormcraw levels.
Yeah, there's some decent options with him. I'm not sure where they lie now.
Here's, oh my gosh, I'm being handed a whole pile of cats and my camera's frozen. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I was waiting for this. Yeah. Oh, there's another one.
Yeah, this is all of them.
There's nutmeg and
all
there's
all
cinnamon.
Of the babies.
Something.
Yep. Yeah, and then we got Creature and Badger. Oh my.
You did not tell me she looks like a wet.
I'll explain it to you after.
Did she fall in the toilet?
It's different.
It's different.
Yeah, Cinnamon got into some mischief today, and she's a little gnarly right now. Okay, so a thought that hit me was, like the early player experience of like you getting into the game and everybody's like, pick the faction you like the look of, and like it will lock you into, gameplay considerations, modes of thinking about, play and what is normative War Machine look like. What would you, how would you characterize, having gone from, peace trade to, like more highly realized peace trade in Kithgard as a way of playing, how would you guide players who are looking at Kithgard as a first faction, whether it be from aesthetics or whatever? Like, how would you tell them this plays? And, would you put some valence on it? Like, this is going to teach you this. Like, Rotmorn's going to teach you this. Stormcraw's going to teach you this. Like, what advice would you give to an apprentice looking at this?
So Kithgard takes an already niche aspect of the game, being ambush, and makes it their like sole purpose. So the biggest problem I find with Kithgard right now is it's really hard to communicate with non-Kithgard players about how to approach a game, because they fundamentally have no idea how you're supposed to when their army doesn't do anything like you. And I feel like moving down the road with Fane and future releases, there's gonna be a lot more of that, where it's kind of hard to have like outside of your faction like communication, because people know how your faction works, but they don't understand the nitty gritty of it. And with Kithgard, that is probably my most apparent thing. Is like it's very difficult. I talk with you a lot about it because you had a short stint with Kithgard, and I talked to Peyton Priest about it because he did. But if I talk to my locals who just don't interact with Kithgard, this army is just not real to them. So if you're a newer Kithgard player, I would definitely approach the faction as an anomaly. Like, you have to reach out to people who have the experiences that are ahead of you and talk with them, and to understand the playstyle that they offer. To me, they're very much a peace trading army. Rotmorn is kind of the only exception, I would say, because she's a little bit of do everything. She's not my favorite caster. She's my least favorite because of her feat being like this perfect turn design. But going into this army, you definitely have to know your style and if they match you, because this army wants to trade. This army wants to be put in favorable positions, and this army takes a lot of reps, both playing as and playing into, to understand their like the fundamentals and what they're trying to accomplish. Because it's not straightforward. Like, Craghorn's pretty straightforward. He's going to drop a chomper on your head and hope it works. But when you're playing into, especially like casters like Stormcraw and Rotmorn and Tarja, like those casters are not straightforward. Like, Tarja has just like most Tarja lists run a unit, a melee beast, and a ranged beast in ambush, and any trapdoors can become any one of them. And depending on how the Tarja player plays around it means how you have to react to it or have to proactively stop. And this army has a lot of layering, a lot of thinking. It's definitely not a user-friendly army, and I wouldn't start with this army personally. But if
I was gonna say it's like I almost probably advise anyone who wants to get into this game as an apprentice is like, do not start with this faction. The stuff that's going on here is like, you won't even have a concept of of why this works and how this works for like months.
Yeah, I think this army and Gravediggers is definitely like the two armies I wouldn't start with, and it's unfortunately those are like the two armies I see the most people start with. Right?
Yeah, because they're visually exciting and
and they're very relatable to modern time. Like in our real world, like a lot of these models play off of the history of humans, right? Like, there's no Storm Legion equivalent in modern time, but there is a Gravedigger equivalent, there is a Kithgard equivalent. So it's very easy to like grab onto these if they've already fit an aesthetic you've found that you've liked in the past. But this army is difficult. Like Ed in the chat, I don't know if he's still here, but he said he's 0-10 with this army, and I hear that a lot. There's a lot of players I interact with in the global forums that see Yeah, so Stormclaw is forcing me to learn fundamentals. Grimtusk makes good use of my experience with Doomy 2. So exactly, like each caster takes an aspect of what the army is trying to achieve and they twist it to their own toolkit. And it's very difficult because it feels like every caster, when you pick up a new caster in this faction, you're starting back at like ground zero on what you're trying to accomplish. So being 0-10 in this faction isn't surprising. I played a lot of games before I started to understand them, but I also am a fortunate enough player to have people like Cosma and Peyton in my ear who I can just like spam message and get their insight. You know, before I even bought the faction, I asked Peyton to send me like all his lists, like all of them, and he sent me like 7 lists. And then I was like, why this, why that, why this, why that, and it broke down the faction a lot faster. And if you're not able to have somebody like that in your meta or in your local community, it's very difficult to find the whys in this faction. And this faction, like Gravediggers, has a lot of whys.
Right. Yeah, because there's a lot that's playing off of like core gameplay fundamentals. Like, you know, unless like this is kind of a concept in 40K that like is actually game relevant experience for 40K versus Magic the Gathering. Is like if you're really familiar with the logic of Deep Strike in 40K, Kithgard will make a lot of sense, and why Deep Strike, for all its limitations, is preposterously powerful. Is you're essentially maintaining constant optionality, and that your unit is arriving exactly where it needs to be with no prior exposure. And you know, in 40K, it's not really common that you can deploy models, have them activating and fighting, and then go into Deep Strike as well. But there's some like really core like positional logic and like, you know, philosophy of action logic into why this faction is really good, and it's not intuitive right away.
No, yeah, understanding like they're playing Kithgard infantry is like specifically like without the UA they can't start an ambush. But there are certain matchups where you want them in ambush. So there's certain games where I will deploy a trapdoor marker 11 inches from my 10.9, whatever you need it to be, from my deployment line and run them straight into ambush, right? And the same thing with like Lieutenant Frag Thornbane, like that dude sometimes has a reason to be on the table, but there's a lot of times where you just want to run him into ambush. And so understanding these matchups and where to apply these things is very powerful. And going back to like the deep strike concept with 40K, a lot of like uppy downy is a term in 40K, and it is very strong. Like being able to come out of strategic reserves or deep strike and then to go back in it is like a very powerful thing, to the point where certain factions or lists are designed around the concept of being able to go in and out of deep strike, and they're typically highly competitive. And they have a lot of high skill flora, high skill ceiling because of it. And there are ways to play this faction straightforward, but playing a unhonest faction in an honest way does not typically amount to great results.
Right. Yeah. Uppy downy is really good. I think I've been saying it for like, because we talk about this periodically, and I've been saying every chance I get, like, you know, everybody gets fixated on coming out of tunnels. Nobody thinks enough about going into tunnels, and that's probably on net the more powerful ability.
Yes. Yep. When the games start getting down to where you're running out of models and you just like, I have no use for Logan Grindstone or for Magaboise anymore. Like she's going to run into ambush or run into the tunnels and pop out the next turn. And just every turn from here on out is going to have someone on my turn is going to walk onto your objective. Every turn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And being able to position that in such a way where you can claw out these games is the difference between like what makes Kithgard players able to break that 0-10 streak or not. And there's just a lot of layers going on. Like you were talking about Gravediggers. Gravediggers in my mind have a similar aspect to where as long as they have one crate available, right? If they start the game with 2, they always start the game with 2 light crates. They never, no reason ever not to. As long as they have one crate available, there's so much optionality that your opponent has to play around. The moment there's 0, the moment you use both crates,
it's the
the game.
biggest weight off your chest. It's
Oh,
such
yeah,
a
absolutely.
relief.
Every time I've played against Gravediggers, the moment my opponent uses double ammo crate, the game's just lifted. I'm like ascending now. Like it's such a good feeling to not have to worry about an ammo crate over there or a jack threading 2 further inches or 2 jacks threading that far, and like it's the moment you reveal your hand, everything just starts falling apart for that army in my mind, or the game's already over because the Gravedigger player's in such a dominant spot that it doesn't matter anymore. But that's the same thing with Kithgard. But the difference is Kithgard can go back into the tunnels. They can pick up the crate.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like they've got the same dynamic, but Gravediggers is mechanically 100% front loaded, and there's no way that they can't be.
Yep. If Gravediggers could move the crates with them, or if it's attached to the unit and they drag it around, like maybe, but when you tell your opponent what starts an ambush and you're able to modify what goes in and what comes out so often that it continues to add this layer. The moment your hand is revealed with Kithgard, you're kind of just playing a normal game. And that's not where Kithgard wants to be.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right about oh, well, what's Logan Grindstone going to do? Like, I don't really need the shield guard or the rerolls. So let's just put him in the tunnel.
Yep.
Because I think, in a successful Kithgard game, you probably want to ambush on at least 3 distinct turns, if not more. And it's because, as you say, having the threat of it is a really, really, really big deal.
Yep. I played in an IGQ this weekend, and I played against Garrett out of Arkansas. He's a very good player. And I was playing Stormcrawl. I popped feet with Stormcrawl. I had all the ability in the world to just put all 3 units from ambush on the table and charge into things. But I purposely just didn't put one down. I'd rather it stay in the reserves and have fuel in the tank later than to just overcommit and just throw 3 units at him, right? And then later in the game, they came out and they walked onto an objective and they just stopped him from double scoring his 40s. And it was just such a more valuable position to be in that moment than just to have him charge whatever it was going to charge at that time.
That might be like the real reason, unleashing the excellency of this peace trader mindset that you've developed is that sort of thinking isn't automatic for Kithgard players, and the performance of the faction really is handicapped by the level it's being played at. I think when you it didn't matter who was picking it up the first month that Kithgard was out and available to the public, or month-ish, when we had all the spoilers and people were playing on War Table, people were very excited for the faction, but the strategic thinking was amateurish at the time. And it sounds actually you're keeping one in reserve. You're keeping gas in the tank to keep the game going. That's actually showing, that mindset is coming to maturity, and that you found a completely strategically different way to express it, which is interesting.
Yep. Kithgard's an army that wants to play until turn 6. It's not the Dark Ops that wants to do it, but it's an army that wants to just continually add layers to the battlefield and put pressure wherever it needs to put, and then has the added level of just going back in and reapplying it later. So it's I don't know. I enjoy the faction. I missed out on that time period you were talking about. I did not like Kithgard on their initial release. I thought their rules were a little uninteresting and nothing really excited me. There you go, Connor. But what was I going on? It was up until the Stormcrawl box with the cutthroats and the steelbacks.
The faction not make sense until those guys.
No, literally it had zero. That faction seemed so uninteresting until that box, and I was like, hold on, there's something here. And I didn't even buy it then. my group did a group order, and I was like, I don't like Storm Legion. I don't want to play this game anymore, so I'm gonna try something else. And I bought the entire faction, and I got into the faction like post full release, and everybody's already having all these like success with them. All this like data is coming out about them, and I'm just now like unboxing my models and putting them on bases. So it's never too late to start or to be innovative with this army, especially playing an army that it's so exciting to play an army that still has models coming out. There's nothing better than the feeling of knowing your army continues to be diverse and to continue diversifying, right? With the Journeyman coming out for them, with the Fortress King, with the 80 millimeter. Like there's so much more to look ahead on. And I feel like if you're someone in a position where you don't like your army and it's not providing to the playstyle you like, some things that are new and exciting can. Like I don't know how people play Khador anymore. Like I've given that army a lot. I've played that army, but it's so rough to play. Like playing Khador into Old Umbre has to be insulting. Like,
well, I mean, part of it is like a lot of the fully. I was playing fully released Brine Bloods for a really long time, and I was happy as a pig in mud. But well, that was until until the consequences of January came home to roost. But a lot of the fully released factions also tend to have inherent design problems because they're just from a totally different design epoch.
Yep. And you were saying that earlier, and I think what they've started to notice that, and now they're going back and they're adding in things to those older factions that make them seem more interesting, like Savrin gaining the first instance ever of resourceful, but specifically for warrior model units. Whatever that, like, was it master, strategic master or something? What's the ruling?
Dude sourceful.
Dude sourceful. What a term. Yeah, so dude sourceful, right? Slapping that on him makes him very different. Arcane authority is the actual term, but dude sourceful is what it is now. Vilpul gains a prototype mask and adds another element of being a reloading weapon master on her ranged attack. Like, they're definitely seeing that these casters were made under the assumption that they would be unique with the spell rack, adding to their initial rack or their initial list. And with removing it, definitely took a piece of like a lot of casters' identities. So going back and adding that back to these factions is probably the only way you make them relevant again.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. We are about at time. I have had a great discussion, great time with this discussion, Max. We're definitely going to have you back on. Once I do some reading on this Magic article, and we'll maybe we'll make that one a round table. But anything you want to shout out to the people before we get on out of here?
No, I appreciate everybody for being here, and thank you, Cosmo, for having me. It's been a delight to actually talk about this and not be in a Discord call while I'm frantically painting for an IGQ.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that wraps us up for today. Keith, take us away.